You're at 109 right now.
Mic check. Mic check. Welcome to IC109 Podcast again. This is Larry Wiggs with my in studio guest, Big Mike. He's playing a video game right now. I'm setting up. Let me get the microphone set up. Yeah. I think I'm pretty good. Let me turn this. So, what's up, man?
Ain't nothing much. Just another damn paradise.
California. Paradise. So, what are we going to talk about? Did you know that the Spanish Empire attacked Netherlands?
Recently?
No, not recently, but historically. That was something that I discovered. I was doing some research on the Spanish Empire, and they were wild at that time. They were pretty wild. They were conquering, trying to conquer the world, and they were doing their thing. Oh, another thing about Spanish and Spain that I learned, one of the teachers told me that the Moors had influenced Spanish society, or the society, the culture of the people on the Iberian Peninsula so much, so greatly did they influence it that they, whoever the leader was, they had to convince the people. They had to cajole, coerce them into using Spanish. Like Arabic had become so entrenched on the land that the Spanish crown and those who spoke Spanish had to be quite crafty in one, expelling the Moors, and two, what is it, trying to, I don't know what the word extricate, trying to get rid of the influence. So they had a formidable task ahead of them. The Moors had done their thing. And then the whole idea that, the Moors, or rather that African societies were so far advanced, and European societies were so far in the dark ages. I was watching a video. This brother was traveling through Syria, and his tour guide told him, he said, man, he basically said Europe was in the dark ages when Iraq and Syria, Babylon, all these other nations were prospering, advancing. These Muslim nations were prospering when Europe was in the dark ages. And this guy he was a Muslim. He was a Syrian talking this talk. And I usually hear that from black scholars who one could argue, the black scholars who are trying to pacify the people, pander to the blacks. There was this video I watched, and the black guy said, or he showed a comment from a white man. The white man said, "We was kings and shit."
I mean, that's a common trope of white supremacist websites like Stormfront.
We can't hear you. You're not close enough to the mic. Can't hear you.
Yeah, that's a common trope of like white supremacist websites. They'll have we WZ KNGZ, and then they'll have some like awful caricature of a black person, and it's funny. Like a lot of your passport blacks, they also use those same racist imagery. It's very interesting who picks up on certain things, but you know,
Huh.
yeah, like, yes, I think we spend a little bit too much time talking about like being kings and whatnot because most black people weren't kings anywhere on this earth because most people weren't kings. You know, it was like it's just like the distribution of power now. There's an elite of a few people, but the vast majority of people are ordinary worker bees.
Yup. For some reason, my microphone sounds a lot louder than yours. Man, yeah, couldn't have. Not everyone could be a king or a queen and stuff like that. But Ethiopia has had the oldest monarch, the oldest I want to say empire, emperor, dynasty. The oldest was in Ethiopia, and the last emperor was Emperor Haile Selassie. Man, oh, this microphone is just causing problems. Jeez Louise.
Yeah,
So you heard Kendrick Lamar is losing the battle?
I mean that's just what I think Joe Budden and Gilly the Kid said. His song was kind of whack, and then people are like taking exception to the idea that he's basically questioning the black authenticity of mixed race light skinned black men like J. Cole and Drake. And see, I'm all for that. If like my wife is Asian and my kids are mixed race, but if black people wanted to say the only authentic black people in America are uh, foundational black Americans that have American chattel slavery on both sides of the family, I'm cool with that. The problem with black people as it is we're way too inclusive and we don't lock down anything. Like you walk around these neighborhoods now, and the Hispanics have locked down certain industries, certain neighborhoods. It's hard to get a job as a black person in Los Angeles County. You Even in the jobs where Spanish isn't necessary, you still aren't necessarily going to get the job if Hispanic is the manager.
I was in Las Vegas at a Target. This was a few years ago when I was delivering food. I delivered food to the Target in Las Vegas. I pulled up to the Target and the Latina told me, ushered me this way. This is where the food goes. So I wheeled it to the back to where the employees worked at this Target. And when I got there to the serving area and I put the food out, like everyone was prepared for a party to celebrate like Julio or Jorge or Manuel or something, and he was the like he was the little king of that Target. He was a manager, and they were going to celebrate his birthday or something, so they had the party, and I just couldn't believe how much energy that they had put into celebrating this guy, who was their manager or whatever. And there was like one black woman, young black woman who went along with all of it, and it was pretty bizarre to me. And I thought, it's interesting how all of these people got behind this one dude because that's indicative. That really shows you their maybe their bias. Like, this is our king, this is our champion, this is our guy. And if you're not him or, or like him, then no one cares. And I'm just like, wow, can you imagine having that much support behind you in your particular endeavor where people are just like, that's our dude. And it was at Target. That part was disconcerting. It's like, what? All you guys were on this guy's side, on his team? So whatever he says pretty much goes. Like if you don't get along with him, you're not getting hired here. If you don't see him as the king around here, well, then, then we don't want you here.
Yeah, yeah, man.
And then that's the same thing with like the Catholic Church. I imagine, which I find it interesting that you were raised Catholic.
I wasn't raised Catholic.
You went to a Catholic school.
Yeah, I like. It's funny. Like my fam. Like it seems like all black people have to have a smidgen of Christian religion. So like in my household, I can count on one hand the amount of times that we went to church. We weren't members of any church.
He said he can count on one hand the
Yeah,
amount of
like
times.
my great grandmother was honored by her church, and we all had to go one time. That's one trip I remember, and it was probably like two or three other trips like that. But like, and then I told my mother I was an atheist in the sixth or seventh grade.
What?
Everything, well, like when you start examining those stories, they're retarded, and then like when you get older they try to give you a more sophisticated explanation of this retarded story, but like as a kid just your visceral reaction to God got angry and he flooded the entire world and killed everybody, because when they talk about Noah's Ark, they always tell the Noah's Ark story to a child. You're going to get that story, but they're going to talk about two of every animal came and got on this dumb boat,
Yeah.
which isn't feasible
Yeah.
for a variety of reasons, especially with the technology of the day. But they never go into the part where, yeah, and then God killed everyone. This family lived, everyone else died. They don't highlight that. But if you're a thinking child, that's what the story means to you. So they told me this story, and I knew enough about science and biology and the care and feeding of animals that two of every animal couldn't have possibly survived on this fucking boat because they're antagonistic. A lion would eat a
Wow,
penguin.
that's a good point there.
So that wouldn't work. You can't have two of every animal. Anyway, so I told my mother, and she didn't care because like Christianity meant next to nothing to her too. So and I told the people at school, and like we had an actual religion class in seventh and eighth grade. Religion was a class you took.
We
So
had that too.
yeah, so I would write all my papers from an atheist point of view of why this couldn't possibly happen historically or scientifically or just common sense,
Wow.
like the Bible, because like there are multiple creation stories just in Genesis. There are a couple stories,
Yeah.
so like none of this makes sense. One guy wrote multiple versions of the same story. Yeah. Jesus resurrected a guy from the dead who presumably should still be walking around to this day, if that happened. So yeah, it's all nonsense, and I think that's what keeps black people down, because they gave you a religion with that focus you on not on the here and now, it focus you on
The hereafter.
the hereafter. So it doesn't matter how bad my position is now. I'm going to live in eternal bliss. And I think on a certain level, every black person knows that that's bullshit. No, it's not going to happen. But it's a way to shirk responsibility. So if you only got one life and somebody is oppressing you, it becomes your responsibility to get away from that oppression or to kill that person. But if you got a do over coming, if you got a million years of bliss next to white Jesus, then you can say, well, this 40 years under Master's whip, I could eat that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But like, if you ever been to a Christian funeral and saw somebody cry, you know they don't really believe that bullshit.
Mm.
If you thought heaven was real and your person was going and you gonna meet up with them,
Mm.
you wouldn't cry like that. Did your parents cry like that when your sister went to Spelman?
Cry like that.
Like you said, they
Oh.
didn't boo hoo and cry and all that shit, did they?
I mean, she was. What you talking about? She went to college.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is,
So when she left the home, when she left the nest.
right, but they knew that she would come back eventually, and she's going to a great place. But when people
Oh,
die,
I see
they
your point.
ooh, they crying and they throwing themselves on the casket or whatever because they know it's the end.
I see your point. I see. I see. Damn. Well played. Touche. I see it. Right. If you expected them to go off somewhere and then come back, or to be reunited with them, then there's no reason to cry.
Like when people say anything, but watch their
Uh,
behavior. Behavior tells the
wow.
truth. So like these women, these women have this thing. Would you rather go into the woods with a man or a bear? And they all choosing the bear because they disingenuous. If women really thought that men were as dangerous as they say they are, a woman would never get in an Uber with a man. A single woman would never go back to a man's house for illicit sex.
Yeah, I think that we get a lot of this BS in the media. I think that yeah, the average interaction between humans is cordial, is safe. Like for the really bad things that happen, the statistics of them happening, I don't know. They're just like they're so low. Statistically, certain events, like okay, what is it? You walk out of your home and you think to yourself, "Oh, I could get hit by a bus." What's the likelihood of that happening, and what are the statistics of how many people have been killed by, buses, being hit by the bus? Not many. It's an irrational fear for that to happen. But the media will play up a story about someone getting hit by a bus and have you fearing for, oh my gosh, there are killer buses out there. Yeah, so you know, just as you said in the case of women, the media will, and maybe not even the media. I think what's happening with social media now is we are now the agents of our own oppression, or the agents of our own misinterpretations, the agents of our own stereotypes. We are putting forth videos that cast people in certain lights, that project a particular image that we deeply, I guess, subconsciously believe. Whether that is whether statistically these things are true or not, we tend to latch on to these general ideals and run
Well,
with them.
we live in the safest time in human history.
Mm.
Like the odds of you getting murdered in the street are infinitesimally small.
Yeah.
The odds of like America's murder rate is like 17,000 people. There are 330 million Americans. So that's
Right.
like that's not even a rounding error at this point.
Mm.
Like murder is a big thing. The most dangerous cities in America, I mean, it's nothing. Even if you just said all black people, if it was it's 40 million black people and 17,000 murders. If it was all just black people, it wouldn't realistically be a big deal. You're not
Mm.
even talking about 1%.
Mm.
1% of 40 million is 400,000. So we're
Speak
not
on
even
that.
talking about. We basically talking about 3% of 1%.
Speaking of percentages and infinitesimal, numbers, that's what I'm talking about with 10-9.
Oh God, you got a mental illness.
You go outside, what's the likelihood of seeing those numbers? So, oh, you know what I did?
Anything that's counting over 100, the likeliness of getting to 109 is very high.
No, okay, yeah, okay. If you open a book, no, no, no. This is how it was explained to me. If you look at a random set of numbers and you look at the distribution of those numbers and the first digit, there's this thing called the Benford-Newcomb law. You see, if you look at the numbers and you ask yourself how many numbers begin with the number one, how many numbers begin with two, three, four, five, six, all the way up to nine. Well, you're gonna find that in a random distribution, random collection of numbers, the the number one will precede more numbers like 30% of the time, and that's higher than twos, threes, four, five, six, seven, eights, and nines. That's the Benford-Newcomb law. So one. So the reason being, if you look at a set of numbers and you start from one, and you go from one to let's say 1,000, you've already you already have all of the hundreds. Plus you have let's see, you have 1, 10, and then you have all the tens that go through 10 through 19, and then you have the 100s and all the 100s that go through until, okay, let's say 1 through 200. So if you look at the numbers from 1 to 200, the majority of those numbers, 30% of those numbers begin with the number 1 because 1 repeats. So when you look at, it's the same thing. Like if you're looking at, I don't know, you're looking at they look at the populations for cities. Look at the distance, the lengths of rivers, the heights of mountains. If you were to, you could choose anything, and the Benford-Newcomb law says that 30% of those numbers, 30% of that data is going to begin with the number one, because that's just how number one plays out. Now, I say that to say, just when I walked outside and I saw 109, I didn't see. I mean, what I'm saying is that the likelihood of seeing a car's license plate with 109 on it is infinitesimal. It's so bizarre. The odds, excuse me, the
No, it's
odds.
not.
Nah, because I looked at it. Okay, so here's something to think about. In California, they are running out of license plate numbers because the the what is it the convention is it's a number, then letter, or number, alpha, 3 letters. It's a number, 3 letters, and then 3 numbers. So they already started with one, AAA, 111, and I think they started with that, I guess, pre 1980s or so. And they're now, if you look at license plates in California, we're at the number nine, 3 letters, and then 3 numbers. And it's going to be, I think, I think they said by 2030, if not sooner, they're going to run out of numbers. They're going to hit 9ZZZ999. Okay, so there is a
But
convention.
the solution is very obvious.
Switch to the convention. Change the convention.
Yes, you instead of starting with the number and then the letters, start with the three numbers and then the letters and then the number, and now you have a whole new set,
Sure,
and
it'll last.
it'll last for centuries.
I don't know about centuries, but it'll for a number of decades. Because the problem is there's so many cars, so many newly registered vehicles, so many newly.
And all you have to do is when a car is taken off, when the VIN is taken out of the system, you can reassign a license plate just like they reassign phone numbers.
Right. That's what I thought. That's what I was wondering. Why would they run out when there's so many cars that are in junkyards, so many unused license plates that could be recycled, just like you said. I agree. But according to this one news report I watched a week or so ago, they said they're gonna run out, soon. You know where these license plates are being made?
In some prison somewhere.
Folsom Prison in California. California's license plates.
Yeah, yeah, that's all. That's a common trope. Prisoners make license plates all day.
It's not a trope. It's real,
Yeah, I'm sure.
based in fact. And a lot of these prisoners have been rehabilitated through the, the 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 work process, or rather, they've gained skills. They've been trusted to work with machinery, and many of them hope to re-enter society. So the thing I want to say is, whenever those moments when I encountered those numbers 1, 0, and 9 on the license plate, I was trying to figure out how what's the probability? How likely is anyone to see those numbers, those three digits on the plate? And so it led me to the Benford-Newcomb law because, man, that the Benford-Newcomb law was like a godsend because it explained so much to me. It made me think that I had a 30% chance of seeing the number 109 when you go outside the door. But that's not what Benford-Newcomb law postulates. It postulates that yes, 30% of the time any group of numbers will begin with the number 1, but it doesn't say that three digits or like a particular three-digit number in that special order, that those numbers would be, it doesn't say how frequently those numbers can be found in nature, or in a data set. So what I did was I took those three numbers. I took the number 109 and I plugged it into the Benford-Newcomb formula. Just as you can plug in the number 1, the number 2, the number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, you can plug it into the Benford-Newcomb formula, and it'll spit out the percentage likelihood, or the percentage of distribution. So I put the number 109 in there, and it basically told me the number that it spit out for the probability of finding that particular number. It spit out that it was less than 0.03%, far less than even 1%. So it's interesting. You could find a two-digit number rather fairly easily. You could find one digit extremely easily. And according to Benford-Newcomb, you could find the number 1 more readily than you can other numbers. But a three-digit number, wow, that's infinitesimally rarer than those other numbers. So this isn't any mental illness. This is some mental clarity, and this is some bizarre. This is a phenomenon.
No, it's not. It means nothing. You just happen to
You're
latch
at
on to a
109
set
right
of
now.
numbers, and then you hyper focus on it, whereas everybody else just ignore it.
Yeah, but man, you say
Wherever you
I.
see the 109, in a lot of places where you see 109, 110 is next to it, 111 is just their counting. So if you go to a hotel and everything on the first floor, it starts with a 1, then it's a 0 1, 0 2, 0 3. That's just how things are counted.
That's what I'm saying. You're proving my point right there
Then if
because
you go to the second floor, it's 209. You go to the third floor, it's 309 because that's how counting works.
Big Mike, you're. I mean, you're. My story is I was in Ethiopia and I was on the second floor. The room number was clearly posted up there 201 202, or it might have been 202 203.
Hmm.
But somebody wrote the number 109 on the door. So just as you said it, I mean, yeah, I see the only reason why that number caught my attention caught my because it was out of place. It wasn't supposed to be there.
Hmm.
And I'm like, hold up, man. This is crazy because it's not supposed to be there. I saw it, but I've also had these moments where I've seen these numbers, in other places at other times, and it captivated my attention. I'm not so hyper attentive that, yeah, I'm not. I'm not so hyper attentive that I'm like, you know, no, yeah, I expect to see 109 after 108 and before 110, of course. And really, I mean, I'm playing with the idea whenever we pull up to a parking space and I see 10 and 9. Well,
Right,
yeah.
you're actively looking for it whenever we
Nah.
go out.
No. That
You're
is
actively looking for 109 places, sequences that might lead up to 109. You're just hyper focused on an arbitrary set of numbers that don't mean anything. You sought meaning and then you attached meaning when you found things. You could do that with literally anything. Like people do that with their horoscopes. I'm a Leo, so it means something when this happens, and this is a Leo thing, and people do it with all kind of shit. Yours just happens to be 109, but
and that's
horoscopes, it could be what other nonsense are people into?
and that's our
Religion
power.
in general.
That's humanity's power. Human beings have the power to ascribe meaning. This is what we've done for centuries, for millennia.
Right, because
Human
we didn't have
beings.
science to explain the natural world. That's why, like, the world is moving. The world is rapidly becoming more and more atheist because a religion's a big waste of time, and b most of the things that they hung their hats on can be explained away with science. The things that can't be explained away, or the irrational fears that humans have, that's where religion lives now because that's all they have left. They used to have everything and now they have nothing.
But science is leading us, or science has led scientists back to God. Scientists devoted their lives to the science and then they say it could only be God. I don't know who to go to reference, but I've heard that. I've heard that. I've watched some documentaries and that's been a comment. Scientists, what do you think? Well, I was atheist, spent my life studying this, trying to explain this and that, and I've arrived at the
But that's not.
conclusion.
But that's not just because you aren't able to find an answer. Your default is, well, this is God. That's not a. That's not. That's not sound thinking.
Ooh, let me share this one with you. there was this guy. I listened to this dude. He broke. Oh, matter of fact, I know where I heard this. Okay, so in San Francisco, they have this meeting, and they have these people talk about these quirky ideas that they found, and they're like talking about it. I'll give you an example. One man, white dude, did some research, and he was basically saying that um, proof. His thesis was black people had discovered America before Columbus,
Okay.
and so he went in to say, "Look, everything you've ever learned about Columbus has been BS. Here's the proof," and he goes in and shows it. So it's like an unpopular, um, idea that they share, and they thoroughly research their stuff, and then they present it in front of curious audiences and what have you. That's in San Fran. Interesting thing. So one guy talks about how there's this unknown scientist, unknown because she was a woman, and because of male chauvinism, because of academia, the not that there are predominantly more men, but that men were favored, in that profession. So she didn't get any light for her discoveries. But what did she discover? Well, she was studying. Okay, I believe she was in Germany, and this was around the time of the Second World War. So she was doing research on earthquakes, and her discoveries. Okay, so she was using like a Richter scale even before the Richter scale was well known. So she popularized the Richter scale, I guess, or maybe not, because she, like the guy said, she didn't get a lot of fanfare during her life or whatever. Okay, anyhow, so she was measuring seismic activity, and she was able to come up with an idea, this theory. She was able to pinpoint the location, or excuse me, approximate the location a of seismic activity from the other side of the globe. And the reason that she was able to do that is because, as she postulated, it was due to the waves. It was due to the waves, the shock waves, or whatever you that traveled through Earth. But the reason why they were able to travel through Earth and reach the other side of the globe is because Earth's surface is solid, and so the waves travel through like that. Well, maybe I. Oh man, I fucked it up. Anyway, so she's able to approximate the location of these waves. However, there was an earthquake somewhere in New Zealand, and the waves did not travel directly through Earth to the other side. And so she was like, well, if the earthquake occurred over there, those waves should have passed right through Earth's center and come out the other end. But it didn't. So basically, her discovery was that Earth's core is solid, and then outside of Earth's core is liquid, and then Earth's mantle, you know, is solid. So she was able to break that down because of the um, the science that she used to approximate the locations of these seismic activity. So basically, had the waves gone straight through Earth, she would have known that it's a solid, that Earth is a solid, is a solid material. But because she wasn't, that didn't happen, then she came up with this idea that it's a solid core, liquid around it, and then solid on the outside. So she did all that work. And in school, that's what we were taught. We were taught that's what Earth is: solid, liquid, solid. The mantle, the crust, the core, like all of that. And it was due to her. But it was also due to her math. She was able to, her math was so precise. She was able to tell, she was able to not so much predict, but she was able to know where that, on what part of the globe that seismic activity had originated based upon all of her science. She's an unknown figure, but the science is deep. And for so the point here is that it was so bizarre, or rather her findings, the way, like, even the material, the instruments that she used at the time were rudimentary instruments, but it was her imagination. She was able to use her imagination to come up with a solution that years later scientists have either benefited from or have relied upon, or probably both. Benefited and relied upon her imagination, which is why Einstein said imagination is more important than information. I think that's the quote. You with me, or did you fall asleep on me?
No, I'm listening. Hey, where's that drink at, man?
What drink?
That drink you said you had.
The one that's comparable to the one that you share with me?
Yeah.
Uh, Again, it's $3 versus the dollar drink. But you gave me three, right?
Yes.
You gave me three drinks equaling $1. I'm gonna give you one. All right, let me go grab that.
You're at 109 right now.